All right, so that was rose gold Komodo dragon leather belt to behind from the folks out there in Columbus, Ohio, to the Oregon Ducks. Final score in the Rose Bowl, man, 41-21. There's a lot to unpack here from both sides. If you're Ohio State, man, you got to feel pretty good about your chances now with the momentum you have, the wins you have in your back pocket, the way that you have, quite frankly, reached your best form at the most important time of the college football season. How about Oregon? What do you say about them? What do we make about Oregon from this game in itself? We'll unpack all that right now, but first things first, college football sickos, Ohio State fans, Oregon fans, whoever you're a fan of, make sure you're locked in right here. College football every single day. We appreciate you in advance for being dialed in. So I'm watching Ohio State do what they're doing. I just mentioned, put belt to hindquarters against Oregon in that beautiful venue that is an oil painting that is the Rose Bowl. And the score is what it is. And my first thought is, gosh dang, I feel like we kind of got parent trapped when it comes to these games, right? Kind of thought this was supposed to be the way that Texas ASU was supposed to go. I thought that Oregon and Ohio State was supposed to go to double overtime. That was the first thought. The second thought that I had is like, man, this is always who Ohio State was supposed to be, right? Like we talk about how they're built and everyone throws out the $20 million alleged roster, all the talent they have, the portal acquisitions. This is always kind of what we expected from Ohio State. But there were some things we saw during the regular season and most recently the Michigan game that made you feel a little bit like, I don't know. Maybe it's a Ryan Day thing. Maybe it's an internal thing. Maybe it's a culture thing. For whatever reason, they can't seem to quite put it together. But that's the thing now. Ohio State, from what we can gather from these last two games, the way they just abused Tennessee and the way they put Oregon on the shelf in the first day of the new year, it's clicking right now. It's clicking in a very, very real way for all the reasons we talked about. Line of scrimmage. You got multiple dudes up front that will play on Sundays there. You have what some people are saying, more in a second here, Jeremiah Smith projecting to be physically the best receiver to ever touch a college football field. You got two RB1s back there. You got Will Howard now who's playing his best football and making the whole thing go. Went for over 300 today. Like, there's a lot there with Ohio State, and I even mentioned the secondary, that is reaching its peak at the right time. And that's scary for the rest of college football. Ohio State, to me, is a lot like one of your buddies that got his heart broken and then has two plots he can pursue in life. The first plot is, I'm gonna go be a bum. I'm just going to just mail it in. I'm going to feel sorry for myself. Woe is me. I'm going to go get soft, both physically and mentally, and that's going to be my story. The other plot that Ohio State is currently choosing to live out is to go boss up, change their entire way they do things or their perspective or their approach or different energy, whatever you want to say. Ohio State, after that Michigan game, after that heartbreak, very clearly now is choosing the second plot. However you want to say it, they're killing them with success, and that is what Ohio State is doing right now. Jeremiah Smith, to just hone in on this right now, he's going to be just ridiculous in college football 26, the video game. If he's not a 99, send the game back. He's no longer a freshman, which I think is worth noting. Like, he's already played his regular season, has played a playoff game. He's way past his freshman year at this point, from what I can tell. He's ridiculous. Like, that feels like the only right descriptor. He is ridiculous to be 6'3", 215, and to be uncoverable in man coverage as a true freshman. It defies all laws of nature. And it's not just me saying this. Like, you have other people in the college football sphere that have been around it a long time, that specialize in the scouting world, that are like, no, this dude legitimately is the best football player, best wide receiver I've ever seen. Todd McShay said things in that vein. Joel Klatt said things in that vein. Kirk Herbstreit said things in that vein tonight on the broadcast. Like, this isn't just your neighborhood take guy firing off this Jeremiah Smith projection. These are like real deal guys that are close to the sport that are telling you, no, Jeremiah Smith is a one of one. Enjoy this, watch this. He's a game breaker. So one, it's cool to see that in real time. The second part of this is the reality that Jeremiah Smith being on your roster changes the entire way a defense has to play you, because obviously what we just said, you can't play him in man coverage. You can't. Can't play him in man coverage. Can't play him with one person in general. Got to have other help over the top. So what that does is it changes numbers. Well, that would be, something you could maybe do if Ohio State didn't have two RB1s I just mentioned. They go for darn near 200 yards on the ground tonight. He didn't have a quarterback that could also hurt you with his legs, that was able to run the offense the way he's running it right now. Carnell Tate, also like a factor on the perimeter. This is just a bunch of pieces now where you put it with the Jeremiah Smith dilemma. It's like, dude, I don't know how you stop Ohio State. Unless Ohio State's stopping Ohio State, unless the injury bug is stopping Ohio State, I don't know how you stop Ohio State if they're choosing to execute at a really high level. That's the scary part about this whole thing. They've gotten past what I would project to be the most difficult talent test they'll have the rest of this college football playoff. That's not me saying anything about any other team in this entire tournament, but you look at what Oregon is, look at what they did via the portal, look at the way Dan Lanning's built that thing, look at the fact they were the number one seed in this whole tournament going into it. Like, if you now have beaten Oregon, we said this before, it's game on. It's game on if you're a Buckeye fan. It's game on if you're in that building in Columbus. Like, right now, you are the big dog. You are the one who knocks, all right? So that's the first part of this. Hand up. I probably should have said this earlier. We'll say this more on the live show. Picked wrong. Ohio State, hey, that's on me. I wasn't familiar with your game. We'll eat crow. We'll have a good time. But like Ohio State, I picked y'all the first time around in Eugene. I wasn't so sure how they'd handle success. That's the other scary part. They've handled the momentum of the Tennessee game, and you could have very easily, if you're an Ohio State player or coach or, anyone around that organization, and said, okay, awesome. We flushed the Michigan game. We won a playoff game at home. Awesome. Exhale, feel good about yourself, and call it a day. Y'all, if that had been the case, they wouldn't have done 41-21 to Oregon, just so we're all aligned there. So that's the Ohio State side of things. I want to touch really quickly on the Oregon side of things, though, as well, because you're watching that happen, and you're like, man, this was the team that beat this team in Eugene in October. Like, this is the team that hadn't lost a game. Where I land on this with Oregon, when you ask yourself the question is like, hey, what went wrong? Make no mistake, like, Oregon kind of blew up tonight. And whenever something blows up, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not someone who works really closely with machinery for my profession, but have to believe that it's true that it's usually not just one thing when there's an implosion of that nature. The thing that I saw that jumped out to me first was the way that Oregon was losing up front on the offensive line to Ohio State. Like, the stat, speaks for itself to some regard. Oregon being in the minus 23 yards for the game rushing. Like, yeah, it's not good. But like, there wasn't any even like substantial ground game there for Oregon from any running backs. Like Jordan James left the game. He finished as the leading rusher for Oregon. So they weren't, I don't think, able to answer the call to action how you would like them to up front for whatever reason. But I think the reason why you saw the sacks pile up the way they did for Ohio State against Oregon is because the way that Ohio State was just mauling on the back end in the best way possible, the way that they were able to have their way with this Oregon wide receiving core and keep them from separating, the Oregon offense is built to get the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands in less than 2 seconds. Like, in a perfect world, it's catch, rock, throw, get the ball out, go let Tez Johnson be special, Evan Stewart, X, Y, and Z. So one part of this is you didn't have your full arsenal of guys being healthy, able to roll. Like Evan Stewart, I believe, like maybe played a snap in this game, played a couple snaps in this game. At the end of the day, you can essentially say Evan Stewart didn't play in this game. Tez Johnson, a little bit dinged up at one point in time. You didn't have your full arsenal. And so when you're not able to separate, that causes Dylan Gabriel to hold the football. When he has to hold the football, that's not Oregon's game. That allows Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau to have time. Never a good situation when those guys have time to get after the quarterback and rush the passer. So there's that part of it. If we want to get big brain here, we can, and we'll try our best to do that. There's not a whole lot about Oregon from a talent perspective that makes me think they can't hang with Ohio State. Like, the defense looked bad in this spot, and there's a party that kind of feels like that Step Brothers interview scene where you're like, actually, you know what? That is kind of messed up. That is kind of messed up that you looked the way you looked against Purdue. That is kind of messed up the way you looked against Penn State. Purdue, I'm talking about the rush numbers, not the total points, just so we're clear. So there's that part of it. But I don't really question if Oregon had a good game plan. I don't question Dan Lanning and Will Stein and Tosh Lapoy having 20-plus days to get their guys ready to roll. What I question, and what I think ultimately served Ohio State in a massive way here, was the rhythm they were able to be in. Like, Ohio State hit the ground running, fight or flight, beat Tennessee. Okay, we got to get turn the page. We're playing games. We're on to the next one. Oregon probably was happy to get some rest, but they went into the break now undefeated, and in a lot of ways now having that much time and then having to be able to turn it on really quickly when you have the best roster in college football. You have to play in a game that is win or go home. Like, that's a very difficult test, and I think in some ways we saw Ohio State benefit from not having the rest. Sounds bizarre to say. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a bye or that you should not still aim for a bye, but I just think in this spot it looked to me like Ohio State was the team that was ramped up and Oregon was the team that was trying to get ramped up after having that much time to rest. Just food for thought there. So Oregon, they're not going anywhere. Like, if you look at the recruiting rankings, look at what Oregon's going to do in the transfer portal, look at who they have coming back. Like, Oregon's going to be more than fine, I promise you. This will not be the last time you see them in a spot like this. But in the here and now, man, from what I can gather, this is Ohio State's playoff. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow on the live show. But Ohio State, again, they are the storm. They are the one who knocks. And if you see them fighting in the woods with the grizzly bear, help the bear. All right? Make sure you're locked in here. Again, live show tomorrow, talking some Georgia Notre Dame that we'll get after tomorrow, talking some Texas Arizona State that happened today. Going to be a good time. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.